its agenda. In line with Prime Minister Imran Khan's vision, fighting corruption and ensuring protection of all human rights are the top priorities of our government. We are therefore glad to host this important meeting in Islamabad. Ladies and gentlemen, corruption is an enormous obstacle to the realization of all human rights: civil, political, economic, social and cultural, as well as the right to development. It strikes at the very roots of good governance and democracy. It erodes public trust in the legitimacy of state institutions, undermines the rule of law, and violates the values of transparency, accountability, justice and fair play. It also undermines the successful implementation of all 17 Sustainable Development Goals by hampering economic growth, increasing inequality, and inhibiting prosperity. In particular, corruption stifles opportunities for the poor and marginalizes and condemns them to a life of misery and inequality. It leads to massive illicit financial flows out of developing countries. In addition to deadweight economic losses, corruption creates inefficiencies and dysfunctions and skews the allocation of public resources away from the most in need. The United Nations High-Level Panel on Financial Accountability, Transparency and Integrity, FACTI, has calculated that a staggering $7 trillion in stolen assets are parked in the financial safe havens destinations. This organized theft and illegal transfer of assets has profound consequences for the developing nations. There is no doubt that this stolen money siphoned off from the public treasury could have been spent to meet development needs, to lift people out of poverty, to provide children with education, to bring essential medicine to families, and to stop hundreds of preventable deaths and injuries that occur every day. The COVID-19 pandemic has further widened existing inequalities, pushed millions of people into extreme poverty, and resulted in loss of millions of jobs. Allowing corruption and illicit financial flows to continue in these circumstances is nothing short of criminal. Immediate and robust national international action is needed to stop the bleeding of developing countries. Ladies and gentlemen, 15 years have passed since the adoption of the UN Convention Against Corruption, which remains the only legally binding international instrument on anti-corruption. Unfortunately, despite explicit UNCAC provisions, there are increased barriers in the asset recovery process as well as their speedy return to countries of origin. Curbing illicit financial flows and recovering and returning the stolen assets can contribute to effective resource mobilization for achieving SDGs. We continue to emphasize that the requested states should return the recovery assets without conditionalities to the states of origin. We should explore the possibility of an additional protocol on asset recovery under UNCAC. At the same time, framing corruption as a human rights issue and pursuing a human rights-based approach to the corruption can help complement the efforts to prevent and combat corruption and promote more effective implementation of international anti-corruption instruments. So long as corruption remains undefeated, efforts to promote the realization of human rights can achieve little. Ladies and gentlemen, Islam is a religion which guides all aspects of human life. Fighting corruption in the Islamic context is rooted in the Holy Quran and the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, both of which extensively address the major types of corruption such as bribery, extortion, nepotism and favoritism.